My pull to the community ultimately was largely determined by being an interfaith family. So my partner, Gord, is not Jewish. And I needed a place, I needed a school for my kids. And then as we got closer to the community, a community for my family where all of my family was honored. And it was very important for my kids, who I say are fully Jewish, but when they were little, and I think they do too now as young adults, but when they were little and they were figuring things out, to say they were all Jewish was to reject their dad. And so they were half Jewish, and they needed a place where they could be half Jewish in their terms, and where who their dad was honored and respected, and they weren't somehow different or less than. It was hugely important.
I grew up on a farm near Windsor outside of Leamington. I grew up in a Mennonite family, so we were pretty religious. Went to church every Sunday, and I went to Sunday school and all that. So when I went to university, I went to University of Waterloo, and that's where I met my wife, who happens to be Jewish. So when we first got married and started thinking about having children, we were all about bringing up kids in both religions or both faiths, but we just found that it was just too much of a challenge for us to do. It made more sense to us in the end to raise our kids Jewish. They are aware of their Mennonite background as well. Christian values and Jewish values, they are, fortunately in our experience, are syncopatic. The extent of the Christian exposure for them was attending Christmas and religious holidays with my family in another city. So we would travel to Waterloo and experience those holidays with them.
As a non-Jewish member of the DJC, I think it really starts with what is each individual's relationship with their faith, or where as well do they see their values. And I think it's that dialogue and it's that understanding that really sets the groundwork for making sure that an interfaith family feels whole, but also doesn't feel like it's pushing people into places that they don't belong.
I'm originally from Aotearoa, that's the Maori name for New Zealand, where I was born. I'm the youngest of 5 children, and we were raised in the Anglican church. So we would go to church pretty much every week. Very involved in the music. My mother would often be playing the organ or the piano. My dad would sometimes be on the vestry. And in fact, he designed these beautiful stained glass windows that are in that church.
When I was 8 years old, my mom told me, "You do know you're Jewish, don't you?" And I said, "No." She hadn't told me. Her family came from Berlin in Germany, had been secular for generations. But of course they had to flee when the Nazis came along, first to England, and then my mother emigrated with my dad, who's not Jewish, to Ottawa in Canada.
Actually, James and I got together and we ended up moving to Toronto. He has a son here, and so I became a stepmother. And then sometime later, I became a mother, and I think, it was that desire, and the pleasure of marking the passage of time through the year and the seasons, and doing that. We were marking those moments in the year, and then I thought, we should really mark the Jewish ones as well, because that would give a more complete picture of our daughter's cultural background. And we do that through food.
I've taken that on, I guess, the Jewish mother role, and making challah. And on Friday evenings, we almost always try to sit down to a nice meal with challah and wine and be quiet. And I've really gotten attached to that. And again, I never would have foreseen that, but it's a nice rhythm to the week.
Focus on what's really important, being together, sharing food, resting, being outdoors, going for a walk, relaxing, just kind of treasuring being alive.
And something that is a bonding with myself and Juliet and with Miriam when she's around.
So when we talk about the inter and interfaith or intercultural, it can mean all of the traditions that are really a blend of faith and culture. So one of the cultural constants in my childhood and in my family today with my parents is Indian food. I'm half South Asian. My father was born just outside of Karachi. My father's parents are Goan and Sri Lankan, and he grew up in London. So it's a real diaspora, it's a real intercultural family. And one of the touchstones is Indian food, and specifically Indian vegetarian food, because I'm a lifelong vegetarian, as are my parents. So yes, every time we make food for a Jewish holiday, I will make an Indian vegetarian dish, even if it's not always the most popular dish. Sometimes the brisket is more popular, but I will still insist on making some delicious Indian dal. That always happens.
As they got older, obviously they came to their own understanding of their religious identity. Our daughter went to the same college, the Mennonite college that I went to, which is located on the University of Waterloo. It's a residence there. And got exposed to the whole social justice flavor of the Mennonites, and has brought some of that into her own. She would definitely not consider herself a Christian, but Mennonite, there's a part of her that it resonates. The Mennonite resonates with her. But she is Jewish. Our son, less so. I think that his connection to Mennonite and to Christian is a little bit less. But the sense of social justice and doing the right thing, he's got that.
For my daughter Miriam, I really want Judaism, cultural identity, spiritual practice to be a reason for joy and not for sorrow. Her connection to Judaism, I hope that it, stays something that's vital and growing and is something that's meaningful in her life. I know that it's a significant part of who she sees herself as. So for the first half of this year, our daughter is living in Germany, in Munich, and that's for a work co-op term. So she's working there, but she has her German citizenship, which she's reclaimed through her grandmother, who had it stripped from her by the Nazis. So this is it's kind of a watershed moment, really, to be stepping back into a culture and a country and an identity that was so difficult and challenging. And she joined a progressive synagogue. She went to a community Seder, and it's pretty interesting to see herself in that context and really embrace that cultural background and to some degree spiritual practice.